Disclaimer: the We Are One podcast aims to shed light on the abuse experience within the Independent Fundamental Baptist Church. The stories shared are from survivors who bravely recount their personal experiences. It is important to note that unless an abuser has been convicted in a court of law, they are presumed innocent until proven guilty. The podcast does not serve as a legal judgment, but rather as a platform for survivors to share their truth.
Now let's get into today's episode. Here is your host, Olivia.
Welcome back to the We Were On podcast. I'm your host, Olivia, to continue with the Bethel Files and kind of your story, Chad. We are with part two. After recording with part one, me and Chad agreed to do another episode because there's so much more to you and your story with Bethel and also Reclamation Ranch. And also, if you don't know, Chad was a part of the Teen Torture Inc. on HBO Max, and so I would love to, talk a little bit about that too with you, Chad. So I know in part one, we kind of ended it, but I love to go back to kind of the mental health aspect of it. You were 17 when you were sent there to Bethel Boys Academy in Lucedale, Mississippi, and like you said on part one, within the first 5 minutes, you knew, like, this is nowhere where my mother told me I was gonna, where we were gonna go, and you were completely blindsided. Talk about those emotions. Like, if you close your eyes and you think of and you go back to that place, like, how hard was that?
It's hard to go back to still to this day. It takes a lot, but just having the absolute air sucked out of me, just the feeling of your whole body going numb in disbelief, and it's like an out of body experience. I'm watching this happen, like I'm watching a movie. This is not real, but it is real, and I don't have time to react. Like it's like fight or flight response. But you can't do anything with it. And just not knowing what each day is going to bring. And each day is a little bit worse than the day before. And the things that I see, guys leave, you never see them again. New guys came in from all different aspects of life, of the country, different circumstances, but just to having to adjust to that. I'm not going home. My mom, in that moment, just felt betrayed, just really felt abandoned and betrayed, even though, inside there's a part of me that understood that some of this is probably the consequence of my actions. I don't even have time to reflect on any of that. I'm not learning any lessons here about whatever I did before I ended up in this situation. I am only reacting to every day in this nightmare. Let's call it what it was. It was a child slave labor camp. Digging with a pickaxe and shovels in the Mississippi clay in 96-degree temperatures with 96% humidity, building a house for this cruel, sadistic man and his family, and just being treated like a subhuman. It was hard to even watch that movie Holes. Anything having to do with thinking of that is still tough to this day. Thinking of anyone in those circumstances is really hard to process. I really just want to help anybody in that situation. Maybe they don't have someone to listen to them. Maybe they're just being abandoned as well. It was not easy to adjust to. Anyone who didn't go in there and cry is a liar. You're not leaving backwoods racist Mississippi. There's no
Yeah.
light at the end of the tunnel. No choice, especially after I tried to run, but to try to adjust within that whatever structure,
Yeah. Would you say that having, because with these places, with the TTI, and you have Herman Fountain, you have Lester Roloff, you have Jack Peterson, you have all these people who run these facilities, Boyd Householder. I mean, I could go on with so many other names, all the Agape people. And what they do is, kind of like we talked about in part one, you guys were mean to each other because they weren't getting their hands dirty. They were like, we're going to get the guys against the guys, the girls against the girls, or whatever facility you were in. And then you also have that I feel like that complex feeling of like, wait, they're in the same boat as me. Like, I'm trying to be their friend, right? I'm trying to be there for them. How many, like, would you say, because you guys were pinned against each other, was it really hard to navigate who you could trust as like a friend wise, or was it just really survival mode, like, I gotta protect myself at all cost?
I mean, it was a little bit like being, I suppose, you're like a prisoner of war. You're in jail against your will. Not not that you did anything to be there. These are the circumstances, and there was some friendships that were formed through trauma. And just we did look out for each other. Some of us really had each other's backs, and then there was people put in positions of power, and we all know what power does to people. It changes them, and some people can handle it, some people can't. Teenage boys really not equipped to handle uh,
Yeah.
being in charge of that. You're trying to please Herman Fountain and the little bit of the Stockholm syndrome type of thing. I call it just playing the game, because you're trying to gain favor, but you're also not trying to be a snitch. You're not trying to uh, ruin anybody, but everybody also has bad days. So for some people, that's extra calisthenics for their underlings. For some people, that's the people they don't like are the ones in the ditch digging. And there's just this hierarchy that came out of it. I mean, it was Lord of the Flies up in there. It was there was definitely people that you could not trust. Everybody knew who they were. Anything you said was going to get back to Herman Fountain. And then at the end of the night, he'd come basically kick in the door, and he knew everything that happened that day somehow. And everybody is getting punished. We are out there marching, whether it's raining, whether you did anything, doesn't matter. Everybody's going to suffer. And he really relished that. And it was pretty obvious there's some sadistic pleasure coming out of this for him, and I don't know if he ever had a vision and had all the right, reasons for starting a home like this. But it was not the guy running the place. He did not have any good intentions. Whatever
Yeah.
he said to those parents in those meetings was an absolute lie, fabrication. And once you're in his compound, uh, you're gonna have blisters, you're gonna have sunburn, you're gonna have aches and pains and trauma for life.
Hmm. That is something that no matter how much therapy and how much healing, you're always going to struggle, right? Everyone is going to struggle. They're going to have their good days, they're going to have their bad days, they're going to have the days where even a scent can trigger someone, but I always say, the more that we talk about it and bring awareness about it, I feel like it does get a little bit easier in the way of just knowing that there might be someone else out there that can understand me and I'm not alone.
Yeah.
So Was there any, I guess my question, even though I probably already know this answer, but for the listeners out there, talking about mental health, none of these people are equipped for mental health. They're not therapists, they're not doctors. Even some of these pastors that say they have a doctorate degree, it is not credited. It is a bunch of baloney-ness. But what were some things, I guess, in a way, that they would talk about mental health? I guess really Herman Fountain and his preaching, because I know you said it was, hell and the straight to it, KJV only, IFB, Bible thumping preaching. Was there anyone who ever, or do you know if anyone ever went to Herman Fountain or any of the other guys and said, hey, like I'm having a hard time. I'm struggling with suicidal thoughts or something like that. And do you know what they said or did, or did you experience that?
You did not want to go tell them that you're struggling mentally or that you wanted to kill yourself. I'm sure a lot of guys went to them for that, and they put them on suicide watch. Basically, two guys, probably the same two guys that escorted you in, are then going to be with you, and they're going to have somebody. They're going to rotate shifts throughout the night and make sure that you don't harm yourself. Take your shoelaces. Somebody's probably going to the bathroom with you. And it gave them ammo. They're gonna try to take that. His version of like therapy for you was, wow, he needs to work harder. He needs to do more. We gotta really ride this guy harder, and you got to get right with God. And so that was one of his favorite phrases. Boy, you better get right with God. And really, if you were at all feminine at all or anything like that, they were going to exploit that, and you're going to get picked on. And that's the thing about that type of trauma too. It just tends to roll downhill, right? You're a stronger kid, and you're still there's always someone bigger and stronger than you in that place, because then at the top you've got his son, you've got Bubba, and you've got Frank, and then you've got Herman, and then you've got the sheriff out there, always a threat to you also. And so you didn't want to show weakness. Otherwise, they're going to exploit that and try to break you. And if they can't break you, they're just going to try harder. I mean, nothing was taken into consideration for mental health. It is just a reason to work you harder or pick on you more. It was really, that was the environment. And then you have teenage boys, a dorm of 100, and this Lord of the Flies system. So if you could get a leg up on somebody, there was guys that really benefited from having weaker kids, smaller kids, more easily controlled, easier to pick on. I mean, it was really the only way. It's like, the general population of the county jail. You've got somebody who got too many parking tickets, and then you've got somebody who tried to kill someone in there. I mean, those two guys are in the same area just hanging out. How do you think that looks? I mean, you got gang members, you've got
yeah, that is something that surprised me, is the variety of you guys, right? Like, it wasn't just, oh, these kids all were sitting from a church, right? Or all of these, all of you boys were just getting in trouble for lying, right? It was like such a wide variety of you guys there, of actual, like, I mean, Alan was 9 years old, a child.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I can't even imagine, but 9 years old getting sent there. And then he's around 17 and 16 and whoever else, right? And who knows, with all of the influence, right? It's like, okay, well, I'm in here with all these people. I didn't even do anything bad, right? Like, he's 9 years old, right? And then you have you, who's like, I was just being a normal teenager, but you shouldn't have also been tied in with gang members and stuff like that. That is something that I think speaks kind of like even crazier volumes to me as someone who looks into these homes and want to bring awareness, is what a wide variety of boys like were at Bethel. Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Where was I think for Herman Fountain, where was the money coming from? Is
Mhm.
what he cared about. Sometimes it was the states, sometimes it was foster programs. I mean, you had adopted kids absolutely tossed in the trash, and those parents maybe collecting money, like foster parents maybe collecting money and then paying a portion of that to Herman Fountain. So there's a little bit of like a human trafficking pyramid scheme type to
Oh,
this. Where's the money flowing from? And he's
well, that's what
probably,
they love to do, is also take kids from out of state, because one, nobody is going to travel, like parents aren't going to travel the way they would if they were local, right? So that's first
oh
off.
wait,
And second, it is easier to get away with things when you're out of like in a different jurisdiction. These things, these people do that, like Dave, he was taken by a bounty hunter, for God's sake.
yeah.
Like, just imagine you as a teenager just doing normal teenager things, and then, like Dave said, you hear your mom on the phone planning to pretty much kidnap you, and like your mom lied to you and said, let's go on this family vacation, and then you get dropped off, like, and after speaking with Dave and Justin and Micah and now and you guys all have said you guys have forgiven your parents. It's a lot of work, and it's, some are better relationships than some, but I feel like you guys have to have a lot of abandonment issues because of that.
Well, definitely. I think in some ways, I look at myself as a parent, and I already didn't know my dad. As part of the reason I was probably angry and rebellious at that age, anyways, and unanswered questions, undealt with things. You know, maybe some conversations, some family stuff, maybe family therapy earlier in life might have made more sense, but you can't go back. But I mean, those things formed my opinions, and as a parent, I'm heavily involved. I'm there, and I would rather have those conversations than and give the benefit of the doubt in those circumstances. I mean, so
Yeah.
uh but gosh, I mean, like Steve being so young also in there, and adoptive parents, bringing him in there, and um there was kids in there who were just acting out, and their parents had enough money, absentee parents, they just dropped him in there. I mean,
Yeah.
these guys, Herman Fountain actively recruited. He knew where he was going.
Oh,
He went to the places where the money what money was, and he
it's a
knew.
$1 billion industry, guys. This isn't just a couple churches give $100 every now and then and whatever. No, it is a $1 billion industry, and the amount of money that these facilities are getting from state, churches, families by manipulation and controlling, it's very disturbing. Once it's out like on a chart, it's like, oh my gosh, like, and it's sad really when it's tied in with a church, because it hurts Christianity. It hurts people. People are like, oh, if that's a church, I gotta walk away. If that's God is doing, allowing these things and allowing these, I gotta walk away. And it really is damaging to the cause of Christ. But what I think is causing more damage to the cause of Christ is when these churches, they don't stand up and say, hey, I didn't know, like they came and represented themselves really well. They handed me their pamphlet. We were just trusting them that they were good, godly people. And when you don't stand up and say, hey, I was wrong, that is actually what's hurting the cause of Christ, because you're not taking accountability and you're not calling out the bad behavior the way that God would want you to. It's the whole, no, it's the knowing and taking the money and stuff like that is what's crazy to me. And again, it's a $1 billion industry. And like you said, foster parents, adoptive parents dropping their kids off and giving probably just a small portion of what the state was giving them, and they're not even parents. Herman Fountain's their parent, and causing so much trauma. I mean, it's insane. Now, with your time being at Bethel, did you ever see any parents come visit? Like, how frequently? I know you were only there for 6 months, so totally understandable if not, but I am curious.
I did, and um, not that often, but I remember a parent coming there, and they actually wanted Neil's parents. His dad came and took pictures for what ended up being the pamphlet for probably Eagle Academy and Bethel Baptist, and Micah's in there. And we all remember that day because we had to keep marching all day long. And he's taking these pictures, and Herman Fountain had us just put on a show at the threat of physical violence and punishment, and what we called Rose Garden, which was basically the worst gym calisthenics over and over until you puke or can't move. I watched kids physically drop from that. So the threat was real. And, so basically, Neil's dad is there taking pictures, and Herman Fountain standing behind him, like, you better not say nothing, just like the whole time. It was very much just a show. And so when parents showed up, it was planned. He had time to prep everybody, set expectations, make the threats, and nobody doubted him. I mean, we felt helpless in there. Who's going to rescue us? Nobody. How do we get a message out? And there's some real creative attempts, and they all failed. I tried to communicate with my mom on the phone, like I said, and she felt it a little bit, but she didn't quite catch on. She came to visit, and same thing. Is you didn't get much alone time. The focus was, are you getting what you need out of this? And they prep her, and then they gloss everything over. So
Yeah, I mean, it's, I have talked with, other survivors from the TTI world, the troubled teen industry, and they're like, even though I was telling the truth, like, the founders of the place was like, well, she's in here for lying, so do you really believe it, or
yeah,
and so it's like, it didn't even really
more lies.
yeah, it didn't even really matter about speaking up because they weren't going to believe, because the founders had already manipulated the parents so much and brainwashed them into believing that this was the only way and all this stuff. And so people out there, they're like, oh, I would have told. No, don't cast judgment, because you probably wouldn't have. And even if you did, they would not have believed you, because, well, there's tons of survivors out there that could literally testify to that. So on part one, you dropped the bomb that you got sent to another place. And everyone saw my reaction to that. I have been waiting for this name to pop up, so thank you. So Reclamation Ranch, which the founder is Jack Peterson. Talk more about your experience, because in part one, you kind of, said that he was a fresh breath air compared to Herman Fountain, and that, you feared God, you didn't fear him the way that you would have feared Herman Fountain, and how you said Jack Peterson was like, that's right, talk more about Reclamation Ranch. Where is it at? What does it look like? What do you remember? All about it.
So yeah, Reclamation Ranch. I mean, I left, when I got home from Bethel, first chance I got after being home for, I don't even know if it was 2 weeks, and got an opportunity, found out I was staying, and then I got an opportunity to have a friend meet me, got a phone call, and I left home before the age of 18, and I got arrested the week I turned 18, just a couple months later. I mean, my mom had the police looking for me as a runaway in Seattle. And So in jail, she visited me and said, I've got this other place you can go to instead of, we'll get you out of jail. And the thing about, Brother Jack was that he was a chaplain in the jail system. So over in Eastern Washington. So he had access, and I believe that his vision was pretty clear. I had no idea about all of the girls' homes or anything like that. I had no idea about this guy. I mean, the internet didn't really exist, so it's not like I could sit there and do research either from jail, but it sounded like a better option than jail time. Looking back, probably could have made a different choice and still been released from jail. But anyways, I chose that option and went there. And it was in Othello, Washington. So, this feel a little bit of a debt of gratitude for getting me out of jail in the first place. And you really, the structure was, get up early. There was a basically farmland over there. He had, a wealthy farmer that gave a portion of his property to, and it's the middle of nowhere, Othello, Washington. And so we were out there in a house, and basically, everybody had chores, get up early, Bible study. This was an adult program, so it was completely different than anything I experienced at Bethel. I still didn't feel like it was necessarily my choice to be there because I couldn't leave. I was led to believe that if I decided to run away from the program, then I would be put back in jail, incarcerated for the full sentence, whatever, instead of, less than 30 days. I'd been in there for a year. Like, that's crazy. Okay, so I'm not going to do that. I better just stick around and figure this out. And then you really want to earn Brother Jack's favor. You do everything you can. There's guys also from all over the country, and we ended up driving to other states and picking up guys, that needed, not completely unlike, Bethel, where there's guys who knows what they did in jail. We picked somebody up in Beeville, Texas. We picked somebody up outside of Chicago, driving to multiple states and visiting churches all along the way. And you're definitely expected to, you end up wanting to share your testimony and share your story. And like, hey, I used to be on the streets of Seattle. I was a gutter punk with colored hair and piercings and tattoos, and I found Reclamation Ranch, found God and turned my life around. Please donate to our cause so we can help other lost souls, and he, at least in the adult program, focused on the Word of God, and he made you want to, be something. I had plans to go to Christian college, and it seemed like he was pulling all these strings and making things happen. And, met a lot of preachers at a lot of churches all along the way. I still have my Bible with all their signatures in it, and
Hey,
met
same.
a lot of kids that were in these different situations. So some of them were with missionaries.
Now, when you would do the testimonies, because quite a few, survivors I've spoken with, definitely okay, so like, for example, like Roloff, he would tell these girls what to say. And like, some of them would like, oh, I got ran over or something. I was on drugs. Like, the craziest of craziest stories, right? And that never happened, right? Like, they just had to say it. Now, with Patterson, when you spoke about your testimonies, did you say like, hey, I was at Bethel and this and that, or like, did he tweak it, or did he tell you what to say, or?
Well, he definitely coached on that. There were definitely some things that weren't brought up, weren't mentioned. They weren't part of the testimony. Bethel did not come up. Didn't realize it at the time, but now that you say that, makes sense. No, really, it was a little bit feeling like a sideshow.
Yeah, I mean, so the householders, Circle of Hope Girls Ranch, they came to my former IFB church in 2009 or 2010. And I remember them coming, and there was like this video, and it just looked like this fun summer camp, right? And I mean, they were playing with horses. It was just like this like amazing commercial, right? And then you have people who stand up and have the testimonies. And like now, like knowing what everyone knows about circophobe, it's like lies and stuff, and that, the householders coached them and told them what to say and tweaked their story so that it was like, oh my gosh, look what God has done here. Look at this place, it made it so magnificent. So I was curious if Jack Peterson had done the same. And it seems like he kind of did to a certain extent.
To a certain extent, maybe not for me, because my story was an easy sell. I mean, it was accurate, it was truthful, and people see night and day difference between some punk with blue hair to now clean shaven, and here I am. I'm on the right path, and I owe it all to Brother Jack. Well, really to God through Brother Jack, and this opportunity through this program. But there was this guy, Bill, who was older than me, and he was built like the Rock, and he was a big guy. And I don't know how much of Bill's story was truth or embellished. He'd go up there, and it was like that was the star of the show. He'd go up there as the closer. Bill would go up there and tell his story about being an enforcer for the mafia, for whoever, along the way, and things that he had done. And his story changed a little bit. Some of the cities, I just figured at the time, is he has a lot more to tell. So an interesting guy. And here he is, give his life to God. Don't know if that was the truth or not, though.
We probably will never know, but it's crazy, and I know Jack Peterson was really hard with the girls. Stay tuned, because I am speaking with girl survivors that dealt with Jack Peterson and the ranch and Reclamation Ranch, and like I know you said in part one, the girls probably got it worse than the guys there, from conversations and stuff too.
Yeah, I found out a lot more after the fact. I had no idea when I was in there. We even went to Radar Hill, which was an abandoned missile silo, in Eastern Washington, that I think the same farmer bought that as well. And it was like, I don't know if they got raided or what, but when I walked.
I would say, so Jack Peterson got raided. I do know that, and I will put the clip in here.
The investigation started when a teenager complained he was tortured by staff members.
Authorities executed a search warrant, and now 11 children are in state protective custody. The Night Team's Anna Jason joins us live with more.
According to the DA's office, all the children in custody are boys between the ages of 11 and 17. The DA's office also says because of the search, they now have a case. But the director of the ranch denies all allegations. Pictures of Blount County authorities executing a search warrant are posted on the ranch's website. The site says authorities stormed into the boys' dorm, quote, true SWAT style, breaking down the door and entering with guns drawn. The director of the ranch, Jack Peterson, has been advised by his attorney not to talk about the raid, but he does say this.
I thought I was in Russia. That's all I'll say.
The Reclamation Ranch is a Christian home for troubled teens. There's about 20 girls, 20 boys, and 14 staff members. Patterson says the accusations of abuse are false and misleading, and he says the way authorities searched the ranch was uncalled for.
Coming in and did what they did was unconstitutional, un-American, ungodly, and on everything else.
But the DA's office says it now has evidence not only to support the original allegations of abuse, but other cases of mistreatment.
State custody. Several girls were questioned, then released. Director Dr. Jack Peterson says the sting operation was over the top.
It's ungodly, un-American, unconstitutional, what they've done to us. And so, by the grace of God, we're going to win, and we'll work it out. If there's some problems here, come to me. Don't scare my staff and kids at 6 o'clock in the morning. Come talk to the preacher. I'm the man. Come talk to me. Come deal with me.
He got raided like 16 years ago, and because there was a 17-year-old boy who, made a report that he was, abused and stuff like that. And Jack Peterson, his ego is so huge, and in this, like, he's on the news. Like, I just can't imagine Humpty Dumpty sitting on the news talking about, you come with me, I'm the pastor, I'm the man, you come talk to me, don't scare my staff. Like this, not, oh, I'm the big dude, they got raided or whatever. And it's I don't know, I laugh at the clip in a way because he acts like he's the president of the United States. You come to me, like, I'm the man, and it's like, and the news reporter, she's just sitting there like, what? Like,
he's a Detroit boy.
What? Yeah, literally. Oh, that accent. Oh gosh. What was the dress code there?
Oh, it's khakis and polo shirt, really. And you got he paid for the stuff that you needed. I don't know where the money had to come from, the donations that we got, so they kept it going. We ate out when we were on the road. I mean, it was like, we called it going on tour, and that's what it was. It's what it was. It was salesmanship. It was money raising. It was also, I really appreciated traveling. It was, no matter what it wasn't Bethel. And even though there wasn't true freedom, there was a sense of freedom compared to that,
Yeah.
But just, I want to say, he took us to Radar Hill. The reason, I don't know if it got raided, I have no knowledge of any of that, but it looked like everything dropped, like a bomb went off. Everything's in place. Everybody just left, the clothes are all still there. Everything, the places we went there and walked around, and it's crazy. Like, everybody just got up and walked away one day. So I'd be interested to learn more about that. But it's a different type of manipulation, I guess. I did appreciate him. It made me feel like he cared about my relationship with God, but I didn't have the light shining on it from everything from the past. I had no idea. That stuff is buried, and he didn't, divulge that information to any of us. And he just wanted to please him, and like you said, Big Brother Jack, and I ended up leaving there too.
So how did you leave? Like, was it a mutual thing? Did you just do like a certain time frame there, and then he was like, see you later? Or how did that come apart?
I think I had to go home for a court date, and stayed at my mom's, and I ended up making a phone call, and that wasn't an easy decision to make, but I left, and I went back to the friends from, the gutter punks from Seattle, the Brews, what we call ourselves, back to running the streets of Seattle. And my mom never gave up looking for me. She stepped on the gas, and she actually went on Northwest Afternoon and did an episode that shows how, her with a camcorder walking around looking for me, and they found me at this residence, and they're spying on me. And the neighbor happened to be the prosecuting attorney for the city of Seattle. And they knocked on her door and asked for permission to spy on us from her window. And so they've got all this footage. They didn't use my real name, but there's an episode of this show, Northwest Afternoon, just all about this grieving mom looking for her young adult son. and the drugs, I must be in a drug cult or something. So, there's at that point, this is probably the third time in her life she's had to do this for a family member, and she's convinced that she's trying to save you from eternal damnation and a life of drug addiction, and never got the benefit of the doubt that that's not
Wow.
what
I'm gonna have to look into that. I wonder if I could stumble upon it. That's crazy. I didn't know that. But again, this is part two, so we're discussing things that didn't make it for part one. I kind of want to talk about the documentary. In the documentary Teen Torture Inc., and I know this was filmed in like 2016. I know Dave, and Alan and the production team, like you guys all worked so hard, and pitched it to HBO Max, and it finally aired last year. I think it was last year.
I think we filmed it in 2021. There were some things we filmed in 2017, I think, and finally aired last July.
Yeah. And on the documentary, you guys talk about Bradley. And I know that is a very emotional subject for most Bethel. But, to kind of give a little bit more insight, so then if the viewers or listeners go and watch the documentary, they can kind of understand a little bit more about Bradley. What happened to Bradley?
I think Bradley was there for setting his grandparents' restaurant on fire. Bradley was a tall, gangly redhead, and just stuck out in a crowd. Awkward teenager, like a lot of us are at that age. But he's taller, he's skinny, his voice is cracking, he's got acne, he's got red hair. Easy target, for most guys. You look across the room, you see little Alan, little Steve, and Bradley, and then anyone of color, probably. You're singling them out. Most of these guys are singling them out, picking on them, turning it up a few notches. Bradley, oh man, he got picked on a lot by Brother Fountain, by Bubba, and sometimes Bradley would try to stand up for himself, and he just, he got beat pretty bad. I watched him get whipped. Pick your own switch off the tree, make sure it's a young green branch so it doesn't break, and just sitting there whipping him with that. And he'd had enough. He's just defiant and just kept saying the word they didn't want him to say. Almost like, Bradley's last straw. He just can't take it. I got to stand up for myself. My identity is on the line here. And I'm not this guy. And, I would say Bradley was probably someone that they would have pegged for like conversion therapy, type of thing. They really try to figure out what's going on with Bradley and try to break him and fix it their way, which was just horrible. He got picked on by the guys a lot too for that reason, because Bradley might have said something, or someone said he said something, and now we're all getting punished. What do you think happens when they leave at the end of the night with the dorm? He got the sock party where they fill the socks with bars of soap or locks or whatever. Lights go out. You just hear a bunch of noises and whimpering, and it's over almost as quickly as it begins. And there's Bradley bleeding, crying, and in agony, and it's just hard to witness, and hard to be empathetic for people like that, and I was not somebody who participated in stuff like that. And I really try to look out for guys like that, and guys like Steve, because we're in a horrible situation. We're not getting out of it. So usually in situations like that, there's some people that try to help each other out, try to protect the others, and that's just, someone I want to be no matter where I'm at in life. And that was so difficult in that situation, in that place, to be that guy. Because what do I do? And yeah, Bradley definitely got it the worst, just for being himself. It's just for being an awkward teenager, and didn't deserve any of that. Mike Morali also, just for being from Algeria, I think is where he is from, just all the racism that he had to deal with. And people, right before I got there, someone broke into Ruth Fountain's room and stole her underwear, and they planted it in Morali's locker. Of course, I wasn't there, but I got this right from the source, and they beat him. They ruined his knee. He's still probably limping to this day. And he did not do that. We know, I wasn't even there, and I know that some who planted it, and there's just horrible things that happened, and really you didn't want to be on the wrong end of that.
Yeah.
And Steve had a genetic defect with his hips that I didn't realize till now. He's just an awkward guy. Looked like he had these big old boots, little Korean kid, trouble walking. And his hip actually came out of place one night when we're forced to march, and he was in pain. He was crying, I mean, his hips it popped out of joint. He explained it to me when we saw each other for the documentary, which I wish that we could see that reunion. That was an amazing moment in my life, is seeing Steve after all these years.
And I know you said in part one that it was such an emotional reunion, to see him after all the years. And I know that it's, obviously emotional right now, just talking about it. So thanks for opening up with me, and, for the listeners and viewers to understand that, this is still, affecting you, right? This is still, in a way, right? Whether it's only affecting you when you talk about it, or certain people or certain Bethel boys, and I know that Bradley was, talked about on the documentary, and, that was like, you guys all were sitting and just talking about how her, Fountain had it out for him. What was the filming process like, though? How many weeks or days or were you out for it?
It was pretty quick. It was all done in one day. The actual filming of that part. It was show up, drive over to a beautiful area near Mount St. Helens. And they had rented an Airbnb and show up the morning of. We got in the night before, went and saw the guys that were staying at the house, saw Aaron, my bro, and Alan and Dave, and show up in the morning, and there's a crew there. All the different types of people that it takes to professionally film something is quite an experience. And it was an emotional day for sure. They filmed us individually, and then they filmed us together talking and reminiscing. There was also some girls there, some women there who were girls in other homes, because this wasn't just about Bethel. This documentary is about so many more places. Unfortunately, this is, like you said, widespread, and these places are still in existence, no oversight. And so this was just about those experiences. And so they had privacy to film our individual, stories, and then together was definitely nice. And they kept Steve hidden for when he showed up, and then did the big reveal with Steve. And man, it was such a great feeling just to see him in person, get a hug from that guy. I mean, I see Alan a lot. I don't want to take him for granted, but just what those guys went through that I just had a taste of at 17, and they're in there for their whole teenage formative years. I cannot imagine, and they're functioning adults, not like they're, but
Yeah.
I'm sure they have to deal with this stuff on the daily. I know I do. Just to see Steve, and he and the thing about this too, like trauma on your brain, there's so many things that were just locked away in a closet in my brain, and gaps in memory, and swept under the rug, and just long forgotten. This process started through a Facebook message in 2017 from Dave, and I, credit for Dave for reaching out and just sending this network, on fire, really just getting it going. And then Alan and all the hard work those guys did for years. I mean, we originally would meet up and discuss this, and we went and found a production team down in Seattle, that filmed the teaser for this and started this. And those guys made phone calls. They handed out flyers. They were down there every chance they got, trying to raise awareness. We really wanted to have this nonprofit take off to help survivors of the troubled teen industry. We still do. It's just slow going. But
Yeah, I know, like Paris Hilton, she is big for the troubled teen industry, and you kind of see her also on the documentary, and I know also on the documentary, and it's something that I covered with Dave about the bill that they all got passed. What do you think, for if there was any ever like administration to ever watch us, a state representative, anything like that, what is something you could say to them to start talking about, more regulations, rules, shutting these places down? Coming from a survivor's point of view, what would you say to someone like that?
Well, it's state by state, and we already know. I mean, Dave and Alan worked hard to get some laws passed in places like Missouri, Florida. So it starts with, you can't just abandon your kid, just drop your kid and not tell anybody. Something like that needs to happen everywhere. These places need to be accountable. There needs to be some oversight. Someone needs to go around and not just show up and assume that everything's okay. You show up randomly and just be there, making background checks, as simple as that sounds. How about not having guys fresh out of prison in charge of teenagers? That seems like a logical thing, but it's still happening. Medical checks, mental health awareness, having some professionals involved might be nice. Maybe we can actually do some good instead of just making this about making money and abandoning these kids and breaking them. Making life easier for the parents. I get it, but not like this. That's, checks and balances, please. Get out there, boots on the ground, show up, send the rock, have him knock on their door, mess with me. Someone's got to do something.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it really, I mean, whether it takes years or months for it to happen, I do have a feeling that the more that our social media is booming, and technology, and just more documentaries probably going to happen, I'm hoping that eventually state representatives and people up in the, in that world, I guess I could say, that have more power and have more will doing to do stricter laws or regulations, or hey, you need to do this and this and that, if you want to open a facility. I really do have a lot of hope for the future generations to come, definitely with, again, the technology and stuff like that. It's unfortunate that we didn't have this technology in the 90s and the 80s, 70s, and so on,
Yeah.
but I do have a lot of hope for the future generation. I really do. But with that being said, Chad, did you have anything else you would like to share, or, what listeners are to know about you or anything like that?
Well, there's also a lot of people still out there hurting, and that's what we wanted to do, is to create opportunities for people who are suffering now as adults from the troubled teen industry. There's people who unfortunately will never get the chance to help because they took their own lives, or they succumbed to drug addiction, or they just got caught up in the system because that's all they knew and all they thought they were worth. And you people need to know that you're worth so much more and you have value, and reach out. We're trying to start something here. We're trying to have support groups. We're trying to have money to be able to get people the help they need, the medical attention they need. I live with my injury. Dan has his broken bones that never healed properly because he didn't get the medical attention he needs. Steve with his displaced hip, that type of stuff never should have happened. No oversight and no professional involved. These adults are out there trying to function, and you don't have to suffer alone. It's not a solitary suffering situation. We can have support, reach out, and we'd like to make this possible for people. Troubled Teen Advocate Group hopefully get some traction, and maybe some other programs, but maybe some other groups are out there that want to help and put money or opportunities towards that, to help folks be able to move on in life, move forward, and see their worth, and not suffer every day with PTSD from what they experienced. I feel like the documentary got overshadowed a little bit for the work, unfortunately, and I don't want anyone else to go through that, take their life, because we're here and we care.
Absolutely.
I see you, survivor.
Yeah. No, I think that is such a great way to end this episode. Like I've always said on probably every episode, that, whether this is your first time stumbling upon my podcast, or you've heard me say this 100 times, I do this because I know what it's like to feel alone. I know what it's like to feel like, oh my gosh, there could be no one else that can experience this. And just feeling very isolated and very, again, alone. And I know and it's a scary place, definitely mentally, to be in that place. And it's very hard to get out of. But once I realized that I'm not alone, that there is just so many of you guys, whether you're in the IFB or troubled teen industry, at the end of the day, I didn't create this podcast title for nothing, because at the end of the day, we are one, and we are very similar in a lot of ways. But at the end of the day, this we are one is just not a title to me. It is everything that I have built on, and really, again, I do this because I know what it's like to feel alone, and I don't want anyone to feel alone. And so having people like you, Chad, and I just want to say thank you to Dave, Justin, Micah, and obviously you, Chad, for coming on for the Bethel Files series and just talking about Herman Foutland, Lucedale, Mississippi, kind of like how the whole town is really protective of him still to this day. And it's so crazy. And just also talk about the troubled teen industry. You know, there needs to be a lot of advocacy for the troubled teen industry. And, you know, there's a lot of IFB churches that are tied in with these places, whether you want to believe it or not. I highly recommend looking at what places your church are giving money to, what missions are they taking upon. Look up the homes, do your own research. More than likely, they're not a good place. Every time I try to have that little small chance of hope that there's something good in a facility, it turns out not to be. And so it's unfortunate, and it really does hurt the cause of Christ. It hurts God's name, definitely when you use it that way. But yeah, I am just really excited to hear the feedback for, you know, over this whole series. I've got quite a few stories so far with this series in general. But you know, at the end of the day, I am extremely thankful for you, Chad, and everyone else that has came on the podcast so far. And you know, I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. So
Don't. I thank you for doing what you do, and thank you for this platform to be heard and seen, you know, and just not feeling alone. You know, I feel the network. I feel the love. It's been a ride. But
yeah, it you know, it really is. When I started this, you know, I never would have thought it would take off the way it did. And you know, like I said, I think I said on my first episode, you know, I'm just a nobody from Indiana. You know, I'm 24 now, but when I started, I was 23. And I was like, who can relate to that? And the amount of people, just also the age gap, 60-year-olds reaching out to me, hey, I understand. I'm like, wow, I have a lot in common with a 60-year-old. That is great, you know, and the friendships that have came with, I'm extremely thankful for. But again, I couldn't do it without you and so many other survivors. So thank you so much, Chad, for speaking on today's episode. So I hope you guys enjoy this extra bonus episode and stay tuned. I am dropping the Hiles series for April month. Look forward to next week's episode.